Ashley here. Welcome to my channel. So today is the day. Today we're going to start building Ruby. So what's going to happen here is I'm going to go through basically step by step. I'm not using templates or anything like that. I'm going to show you how to create templates that you can reuse later. But this is basically going to be building from completely scratch. And what we're going to do is we're going to build down through the front view. And then from the front view, I'm going to divert between either a really beginner, a straightforward cutout rig versus a 360 rig. So I'm going to keep an eye on the time, kind of see how far along we get after about no more than an hour. But what we're pretty much going to end up doing today is basically setting up the scene, getting our palette, and getting our drawings down. So if you go to my website, I'll put a link in the description. I have got the character model sheet. I want to give a big thank you and shout out to, I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong, Juarez. He created the blank guy rig that you can get on Gumroad. I'm going to also link to him and his Gumroad in the description because I basically used his character turnaround because it was a blank character, and then I embellished it and added the character design of Ruby on top of it. So huge shout out to him. I'm going to put the turnaround up on my site so you can download it and you can work with it. And as we progress, I'll also have a sheet of hand substitutions and a sheet of lip sync mouths for the front profile and 3/4 view, so we can do that as well. So if you've got the file, if not, head down to the description, click on the link, head over to my blog and grab that file. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and import that here. So we're going to go File, Import, Images. You can actually see, I'm going to go to Browse, and I save this to my desktop here. So MC for mouth chart, and then to turn around here, I'm going to grab the turnaround and I'm going to hit open. I wanted to just create a single layer, so you can have Toon Boom import, say like a Photoshop file, and create different layers based on the layers that you have. We just want this to be used as a reference for drawing our characters. So we're going to go ahead like that. I'm going to go ahead and keep his original bitmap. Multiplied with black, cool. Gonna hit OK. And here is our Ruby turnaround in our scene now. But what I want to do is I'm going to show you guys basically the first template that you can create. And this is basically like a reference backdrop that I use, because it's the same tools I use every time I'm starting a character. Basically, I have notes on it. I rough out the pivots that I can use while I'm working through the views. I break it down, and then I'll also have the character turnarounds in it as well. So I've got my turnaround. I'm going to go ahead and add a peg to that. So my hotkey for that is Control P. Notice I've got Ruby turnaround and our Ruby turnaround peg now. Perfect. Just going to go ahead and move this up here. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to create a composite, a new composite. So I did that with Control H. You can also go ahead and hit Enter and search for composite in there. You'll also notice my composite is kind of trapezoid shaped because my preference is set up to always create my composites as pass-throughs. If yours created as a square, you can go into your options here, and let me bring this into the window over here, and you can change it from pass-through, from bitmap to pass-through. If you want to know how to do that automatically, that is in my other video of preferences, so you can go ahead and check that. I'm going to kind of go through on the assumption that you guys have watched that hotkeys and preferences video. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this, hold Alt to click it in. And the reason I'm putting a composite here is because I'm going to have a couple different drawings coming in. So another one that I'm going to add here is a transparency node. And the reason I'm going to go ahead and add that, I'm going to hold Alt down again, is because we want her to be transparent. I want to see my drawings and basically be able to trace and work with that. So we want to have this grouped here. So some other drawings I'm going to want to have while I'm setting this up, like I mentioned, is going to be just general notes. So maybe it would be just something while I'm rotating around, I might notice something and I want to make note of it for future, or I think of a particular way I want to build something. I will have a drawing that is just notes that I make. So again, I adjusted my hotkey, so I'm going to assume that you watched that video. So the default hotkey for creating a drawing would be Control R. I have it set as Control D. So I'm going to hit Control D. And I'm going to create a drawing called Notes. I'm also going to create a drawing called Pivots. And a drawing called Breakdown. I'm going to hit Add and Close. And there's our drawings here. I'm just going to go ahead and hook all of these guys up to our composite. Breakdown, pivots, and notes. And then I'm also going to peg these. So Shift Control P. Reason being, for whatever reason, if I want to move that drawing or shift it out of the way or anything, I want them all to have their own pegs. I'm then going to create, by selecting all of them, Control P, a master peg for all of them. Because chances are 9 times out of 10, I'm going to want to shift the whole thing together. I don't want to scale up the drawing after I've done the pivots, because then the pivots won't be to scale to the drawing. So I'm going to go ahead and rename this reference-P, because it's the peg for my references here. Go ahead and hit Enter and close. Now I've got a master peg for everything, a peg for my notes, my pivots, my breakdown, and my turnaround. And if I want to be really nice, I could rename this composite to reference_comp. Now the reason I'm naming this is I just have a standard naming convention that you're going to see going through here. A lot of the times, well, pretty much every studio I've worked at, there's been naming conventions for you to follow, or special color coding or anything like that. So I just try and keep everything the same. So I've got reference comp, hit enter, reference comp. There we go. And then I'm going to add a backdrop to everything. So I'm going to drag over top of all of these. Now, if you set off a hotkey like you did, you can go ahead and use that right now. My hotkey is F12, automatically creates a backdrop. If you don't have that set up, with all of them selected, you can come up to here, insert, backdrop right there. And you can see I have my hotkey for it there. And then from here, I can click on this little box. And let me bring it back to my other window here. And we can play with it. We can change the color of the backdrop. I'm just going to leave it as black. You can name the backdrop. And if you really want to, you can add notes to it. So this is really handy when you get into more complex rigs. It can become a total spaghetti mess of cables and nodes floating all over the place, and it can be really hard to navigate if you're not 100% sure how rigs are built. Even if you're not the one that built it, sometimes you'll have to look at it and reverse engineer it to figure it out. So backdrops just makes it that much easier. And close. So I use this in pretty much any time I start a character. Same setup. And now that we've made this, what you can do is you can actually create a template of this if you wanted to. Now don't worry about the fact that it says like Ruby turnaround here or anything like that, because you can also go in and tweak the templates after they're made. I'll show you how to do that too. So to make a template of this so I can click and drag it into any scene I'm working on, I'm going to come down to a window that is library here. If you don't have library as one of your tabs, you can basically hit the little plus symbol in the corner of any window. Oop, I don't want the functions. And it will give you a drop box of all the windows you can open. So in library here, you can see we've got a couple different folders. I have an actual Personal Harmony library set up here from projects and other work. So to create a new folder down here, we're going to go ahead, right click, go open library. And I'm just going to go ahead to my desktop here. I'm going to create a new folder. You can name it whatever you would like. I'm just going to name it test. Click on that folder, select folder, and now we've got that added into our library here. So you can start creating this whole pile of references, templates for you to have handy. Now, one thing you're going to notice is there's also little locks next to each of these. That is to ensure that someone can't go in and modify something while someone else is also in the library. So it's more for group projects, studios, and things like that. So if you see the lock here, you won't be able to add any templates or make any changes. What you're going to have to do is click on the folder that you want to add your template to, right click on it, and select Rights to Modify. You're going to notice that little lock disappeared. If you're in a studio and someone else is in there, you might get something kicked back that says someone else is in it. You can find that person and be like, hey, are you still using this? Sometimes people will forget that they even have access to something because they've been working on it, finished it, and just didn't take that off. So just make sure you're always clicking Right to Modify. Get rid of that so now you can make any changes, additions, anything like that to it. And what I'm going to do, oh, there's my little pop-up to remind me to save. That is also a preference you can have set up. So every 15 minutes, I get this pop-up that will remind me to just kind of get up, stretch, look around, have a drink of water, rest my eyes. I'm just going to go ahead and say yes for that. But for this, basically, I want everything that's in this little backdrop. So I'm going to basically control copy. I'm going to right click in here. In my little library folder, I'm going to hit paste. And you're going to see reference_comp.tpl. So this is our template, TPL. I can change the name if I want. I'm going to just leave it as reference_comp, but you could name it as setup file, reference file, whatever you would like. But make sure you don't have any spaces in it, periods, anything like that. So follow good common naming conventions. Underscores are totally fine if you want to add a space, but sometimes if you have things like that, it can cause issues on bigger projects or if there's scripts being used on something like that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. Now I've got that template in here. So if I were to zoom out, if I grab this and click and drag it into my scene, I now have a duplicate of this. Now you can do that with as we build it. If you are happy with your leg setup, you can template that without the drawings. So you just have your nodes in there and you can click and drag limbs and parts of characters in for quick reference. Now you notice here I actually have the Ruby pictures in here, so I don't want to keep bringing Ruby's picture into every project. So down here, notice when you're looking at the screen right now, I have little red boxes every time I go over a window. That means I'm basically working on my rig file right now. If I come down to my reference comp and I right click, I can go edit template. Ta-da! And now we're in a file. You'll notice the boxes around my windows are bright green now. And I'm in that template file. So I can make changes to the template in here, which is really handy because if I'm in a project, I may not want to bring over my palette from that scene. So you notice right here, there's a scene palette on there. I'm not going to want my scene palette from YouTube Ruby in a rig for a mouse that I'm building or something like that. So first thing I'm going to go ahead and do to make this a general template, so I'm going to go ahead and delete the Ruby file from it. So this is just that template. It's not affecting what's in my other scene. We're going to delete those. I'm going to create a new drawing, and I'm just going to actually leave it as drawing. Add and close. Bring it down here, hook it up. I'm going to add a peg to it. Up there. Now I have a completely generic reference template that I can bring into my other shots. However, I still have the scene palette down here. Because there's nothing drawn or anything, one last thing I'll always do with my templates after I kind of cleaning them up and having generic names added is I'm going to come up to File, Remove Unused Files. And you're going to see that it's found, hey, these palettes aren't being used at all. So yes, I want to go ahead and remove them. Okay. So now you notice when I click on these, I don't have a palette coming up or anything like that. We are good to go. This is a completely clean template. I can go File, Save. I don't need to worry about this because it's not going to be used as an action template. I'm not animating with it or anything. It's solely just nodes. Save. Notice there's no asterisks up here, so it's saved and updated. I'm going to go ahead and close that. I'm back to my Ruby scene here. Now if I were to go in and drag this in, you'll notice if I zoom in, got drawing in there now. Now the _1 is because the one in the scene here, I already made one with this. So because it's adding to the same name, it's adding the _1 because you can't have nodes with the exact same name. If it was a completely new scene and I'm dragging it in and there's nothing with the same name already on it, it'll be named like that for us. Okay. So you created your first template, so now any rig you work on, you've got a nice little reference file you can drag in and hook right up to your scene, so you're ready to go. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and set up the drawings for the rotation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, with my animate mode turned off, I'm going to grab Ruby. I'm going to come down here to the cameras. And you see this little one right here? If I click on it, I get a nice X. And honestly, I will also mask out the camera view here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to position her with that middle of that crosshair there. And actually, I might scale her up a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and hold Shift while I scale her up. And then I kind of just like to position basically where you're right above your sternum, kind of where your collarbones meet. I'll kind of position that right in the middle there. So now that I've got her where I want her, kind of dead centered, I had that turned off. I'm going to grab the reference peg, the top peg, because if I want to make and move her, I want the pivots moving with the drawing. I want the notes moving with the drawing. I'm going to go ahead and grab that. And with that one selected, I'm just going to come down here and add a keyframe on it. Reason I have animate turned off when I'm positioning it is I've had it before sometimes where I'm just not paying attention to the bottom of the timeline and I put the keyframe on some frame that's not frame 1. So by having animate turn off until I get it right in the position I want, I go back to frame 1 if for whatever reason I wasn't on frame 1 and set the keyframe. Now I'll turn animate on and I'm going to basically position her rotation through the frames. So I've got my front. I'm going to grab this and I'm going to hold down shift so she only moves sideways. I'm going to again basically line up where that collarbone would be. Next frame. Again, I'm going to hold down shift so it only goes sideways. Now this one I'm not going to line it up with the front. I'm going to kind of put her right in the middle there. We're going to do this across. So I'm basically making sure the crosshair is positioned with the middle of the neck. Dead centered back. So now should have this one. I don't think it's exactly in, it's not exactly in the center of the neck. So let me just fix that. There we go. And we have the start of a rotation. And those are all put in place where we want them. Awesome. So with that there, I can actually turn that crosshair off now if I want. And if I really want to, I can get rid of that masking so I can see the entire thing. Now what I'll also do is this Ruby turnaround, because when I'm, say, clicking on a drawing, I don't want to ever be able to select this and actually move it. I'm going to click on the Ruby turnaround here. Come down to my timeline and hit O. Because what O is going to do is going to center on selection. And this, there's a little lock here. I'm going to put a lock on it because I don't want to ever be able to grab that and move it or mess with it or anything like that. Okay, so now that we've got that set up so I can't click on it and accidentally grab it or anything, what I like to do from here is basically break down the character. Oh, but to break down the character, we're going to need a color to actually mark with her. So next what we're going to do is we're actually going to set up the color palette for her. So I'm going to come down to this color tab, and you're going to notice there is an existing scene palette with some colors in it. I, out of habit, just because it's been done with pretty much every project that I've worked on, is I create a new scene palette. Reason being, if for some reason you're going through and you keep this black color as your line and someone else keeps the default scene palette and keeps that black as their line, but their character has like a blue line or a purple line, you can have color ID issues when you import them into the same scene. So I have always basically gone up here under scene palettes, add. I'm going to add a scene palette and the new palette name. So I'm going to use CH underscore because it's the palette for a character. This is Ruby. So I'm just going to call it CH Ruby. Scene, that color palette type, and it's going to be added to the scene palette list. Okay. Cool. So now this is a completely independent scene palette. It's not a default one. It's not going to share, hopefully share any IDs with anything. So I'm just going to go up here and I will remove the default scene palette and just leave this. Now right now she's transparent. So we're going to come over here, click on transparency, and tap D. It's going to disable the transparency so we can get the pure, bright colors that we're going to have on here. Now what you're going to do when you're creating a scene palette is make sure every element of the character has its own paint pot. So even though, for example, here the eyes and the eye highlight are both white, I'm still going to want a paint pot for the eyes and one for the eye highlight. If, say, down the road for whatever artistic reason, they want to change the color of her eyes because they're bloodshot or something, but the highlight needs to stay white, if though you're using the same paint pot for the highlight and the eye, it's going to change both of them. So I'm going to start with right here. Since this one is black, I'm just going to call this line because her line art is black. Cool. And I'm going to actually work from the bottom up, I think. No, we're going to go top down because then that will line up with that. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and go plus. Yes, I would like to do that work. Thank you. Oop, I lost the line name there. There we go. This new color is going to be her hair. Now we're going to just go ahead and create a bunch of these. Okay, for her hair, we're going to double click on it. I'm going to grab this eyedropper, click and drag it over and release it. Ta-da! There's her hair color. I'm then going to click on the next one. The color picker is changed. I'm going to change this to skin. Now, usually for me, I will just have one paint pot that is skin. I'm not going to have a paint pot for the ears, the face, the arms, unless for some reason that character has like a synthetic arm, so the arm is a different color. Or maybe they have like a tattoo on something, so it's a different color. I'm just going to have one paint pot of skin. Again, I'm going to click and drag the eyedropper over skin. Cool. Next, I'm going to call this eyeball. Drag it over. And then we're going to want the highlight. So what I do for highlights and shadows, I will call it whatever the color is, underscore HL for highlight or SH for shadow. So I highlight. Grab the color. There we go. Then we've got her iris. Which is that dark green color. Our pupil, even though it's the same color as the line, pupil is still going to get its own color. Which if I really wanted to, I could drag it over and check just to be 100% sure that it is in fact like a pure black. And I'm going to move down. So the next thing down from there we're going to hit is her shirt. Click and drag over. Now I've gone ahead and on this particular character breakdown, I gave you guys the colors for the inside of the shirt sleeve and pant sleeve because we're going to, for this character, we are going to add the inside of the sleeve and pants. Some characters will just have the line cut into the arm so you'll never actually see them, but I figured it would be a handy thing to learn. So we're going to have the inside there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here, grab this darker color for the shirt because I've got the shirt here. I try and keep the colors grouped together. I'm going to call this shirt underscore SH because it's the shadow, the inside of the shirt. Then we've got our shorts, which is the bright purple. And our shorts shadow, which is the darker color I have on the side here. And going down, what else have we got? Oh, we've got some socks. We're going to have shoes. And oh, talk about lucky. I just got just enough colors. This last one is going to be the shoe soles, which is kind of like a lighter gray. Oops. A little bit lighter. Sometimes depending on the resolution. There we go. There we go, a lighter gray. I'm going to close this out. Now I've got my palette list here. Every element through here, I'm just going to go once more through. Yep, we've got soles, shoes, socks, skin there, our inside and outside shorts, shirts. Oh, we missed the little heart on her shirt. So I'm going to go ahead and add another color. Heart. I'm going to double click on it. Grab the dropper, grab that pink. But then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click and drag it up here. Just for organization for me, so I know I've got the line up there, and I am going down the colors. The eye colors are all grouped together. My shirt colors are grouped together. The shorts are grouped together there. But now, if I'm making notes and marking pivots and things like that, so we're going to be adding colors to this as we go. Cutters in the rig will also be usually a bright color or something. But I right now want to look at Ruby and break her down into different elements. So I'm going to reactivate this transparency. And I'm going to create a color in my palette for the breakdown. This can be any color that you would like. If you're traditionally trained like me, sometimes you like breaking stuff down with like a light blue color erase pencil. So that's actually what I tend to add. So I'm going to come to the bottom, go add. And I'm just going to call this breakdown. I'm just going to make it like a bright, maybe not that bright because that'll be a little garish. I think I'm going to go with like a darker blue. There we go. Let's see how that reads when I'm taking some notes. Oh yeah, that's good. I can read that. But you're going to want to go ahead and pick a color for that. Now, why am I doing this? Because I want to figure out how many drawings I'm going to need. A rough idea of how many drawings I'm going to need. So when I create my drawings, I can kind of start grouping stuff together in the scene here. And we will go through, and I'll kind of do it through all of them. So then we'll have the notes, and then depending on if you break off towards the cutout version or the rotation version, we still have those notes there. So I'm going to click on my breakdown drawing here, because that's where I want to break down the character. And I'm going to start looking at the character and figuring out how I want to cut it apart. So going from the top down, we've got her hair. And I can kind of look from the rotation. Got a couple different pieces here. If I were to make that one piece with a deformer around it, it's going to be really hard to manipulate and have it shaped nicely. It would kind of just move as one mass if you want to deformer it. And pretty much for every single drawing, you would need a drawing substitution. But if we want to have a little bit more control over the animation, maybe be able to move each individual piece, I'm actually going to break up her hair into a couple different pieces. So I'm going to have one here. No, I'm just using the brush tool to mark this. And actually, I'm going to bring the alpha down on that. There we go. So it's a little bit transparent. I'm going to have that. I'm actually going to change my brush size here a little bit. There we go. That would be a piece. And that's a piece. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I try to use really simple shapes here. I can speak. So the next one I'm going to look at would be a circle here, a circle here, a circle here. Then I've got 5, 6, 7, 8. And then all of this is 9. So I might come over here and note for the pieces that are going to basically hair underscore 01 through 09 are going to be drawings we need. Okay, next. And now while I'm going through this, you'll notice that she's basically a mirrored character. We're only going to build one side, and then we basically mirror those elements over. So over here, we're going to need an ear. We're going to need a nose. We're going to need a mouth. So over here, we're going to have nose. Now we are going to start with, since we're just learning, just a mouth drawing. When we get to the mouth, we'll end up having a lot of different drawings and layers to be able to manipulate the mouth. But we're going to just start with one placeholder for the mouth. We're going to need a brow. But now, oh, and an ear. I missed ear. There's going to be 2 brows and 2 ears. You could name it brow 1 and brow 2, but that's not really a whole lot of information. You could say left and right. However, when you flip the rig, now your left is your right. So what I will name, and has been done on a couple of productions I've worked on, is near and far. So you can see as she's rotating, this side of her is her near side, and this side is her far side. And what's going to happen is she turns, she's there, and then she flips. But this drawing isn't going to suddenly become the near side. What's happening is this drawing is just reversing. So this still stays the near side. So since we're going to do the left side of her, I would name that N underscore brow for near brow, N underscore ear for ear, and then the other one, when we duplicate and move them, would be far brow and far ear. Now, why wouldn't we say like near and far hair or anything like that? Because these are going to just be individual pieces that are going to be moved and manipulated around. We're not going to mirror the hair or anything like that. Okay, the eyes. We're going to need near lashes. We're going to need an eye, an iris, a pupil, a highlight, and I'm also going to add, just preemptively because I know I'm going to need them, is an upper lid and a lower lid. So we are going to have, oops, let me zoom out here, near lashes, near, I'm going to call it an eyeball, near underscore iris, pupil, eye, and this is a highlight, so I'm going to use the same naming conventions that I used over here. Highlight. And then near. Actually, I won't use the full word of upper. Sorry, I'm on a Cintiq, so I just flipped that around. I just went and grabbed the eraser tool. There we go. And erased that. Up, lid, near, low, lid. Cool. Looking at the head here, we are going to need a head, but the head's going to have to be cut into two pieces, a head and a jaw. Reason being, when we do lip sync, if we're doing a mouth swap, the jaw is going to swap with the mouth. We don't have to constantly be swapping out the whole head. When we're doing a lip sync, you just want to do the jaw. So we're also going to have now a head and a jaw. We're going to need a neck. Now for this character, because she's got fairly prominent shoulders, and it's you can get a lot nicer shrug shape if you have shoulders. I've worked on characters where there are shoulders and are not shoulders. It really just depends on how curvy and round they are. But I think from looking at this, we're going to want a shoulder shaped like this. Yes, I would like to save. We're going to need our sleeve shaped like this. We're going to need an upper arm, a lower arm, our hand. We're going to need a torso. So what else did we come up with there? We've got our neck. Okay, we're going to need a near shoulder, a near sleeve, a near upper arm, a lower arm, a hand. Now we will also want a thumb for layering like props into the hand. However, that thumb, it's not going to be a separate drawing that we create. It's going to be a clone of this where it's just showing the overlay layer that's the thumb on it. So we don't have to create a separate drawing for that. That thumb will be created from this drawing. Kind of like how when we get to the mouth, the different layers of the mouth is going to be created from that mouth drawing on there. Now, just preemptively, because I know we're going to need this, we have the near sleeve. Remember, we're going to basically create this character so you have a PC where you can see the inside of the sleeve. So we're also going to need near sleeve inside, or I might just call it in. Let's just call it in. We're going to need our torso. We're going to need that heart. Now looking at this, you can see the shirt comes out, and if we've got the inside of the sleeve, we're also going to need the inside of the shirt. So that's going to be shirt inside. We're going to need a collar, which is going to end up being a cutter. Now when we're going through here, there's going to be a couple cutters we're going to add in as we're building to create like the edge of the arms and sleeves. I'm not going to put those in that list. We're going to create them as we make them so you guys can kind of see why that's being used, and then so you know next time when you're working on something, you go, okay, well, if I want it to work this way, I am going to need this cutter here or there. Okay, so that's pretty much the upper body. Now down here, we're going to need our hips. We're going to need our shorts. We're going to need an upper leg, a lower leg, and again the inside of the pants. So we're going to have hips, near shorts, and a near short inside, a near upper leg, a near low leg, now for this, we are going to want, we're definitely going to need a sock shape to cut into the leg there. So near sock. And then looking at this, we have to determine based on what we want to animate. Looking at this shoe, would it be easier to make the shoe black and have these white pieces cut into it? Or the way I'm thinking about doing it is the foot being white so if the foot was white, and then the shoe shape cuts into it, and this strap cuts into it, because that will give a little bit more control on the shape we can get from the shoe, because then we can just move this strap around here and change that as opposed to working with just this tiny little piece and a piece there. So we're going to have our near foot, which is going to be the white piece that matches with the sock. Then we're going to have a near shoe, which is going to be this black piece here. And then we're going to have a shoe strap. And then obviously for the bottom here, we're going to need our sole. I'm just going to say sole for shorter. Now if we look through here, because looking at it, we want to make sure that the way we're planning on cutting it apart is going to make sense going on, so looking at, say, profile view here, I think the way we have it cut up is also going to be a little bit nicer to work with because we'll have the white foot. This will cut into it here, and that's a piece that cuts into it there. Same with here, we'll have this shape here and that shape there. And then this can kind of come up into there. But now, checking out the rest of this sheet, you'll notice there's also the bottom here. So we're going to need the sole. So looking at this, if we're working with it, you've got your foot, you've got the shoe cut out there, you've got your sole there. We're then going to need another piece that is the bottom of the shoe. Shoe bottom. And then kind of looking through, is there anything like on the back of the character, anything that we might need? Well, one thing you'll notice is looking at the back here, you can kind of see the butt line there and there. And actually, if you look at the front too, if I cleaned up some of my network here, got a little bit of a line there. So I actually think we're also going to want a crotch line for that to make sure we have some control over that. So we've got our shorts there. We're also going to need a crotch drawing. And that is the breakdown of the character. And again, when we're building, we're going to be adding some other things like cutters into it, but we'll add those cutters as we go. So right now, if we're looking at this, we've got 9 for the hair, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 40. 5 drawings so far for the base. So what I'll also do, there we go, is you can see here this character drawing, the character is already kind of drawn through. So it makes it a lot easier when you're rigging to kind of see where all the pieces would go. So when I'm on the breakthrough here, I just kind of go through and make those a little bit more obvious for me, or figure out where I would be putting pieces. Again, just makes it that much easier down the row. Now, thing to make note of, if I'm making these drawings on this frame, if I were to change, you'll notice those notes aren't there anymore. So when we're starting out, that's totally fine here. But what I might want to also do then is go to this frame here, be like, okay, based on my breakdowns, this is kind of what I'm looking at. And maybe not draw every piece, but here is where I'd be like, okay, that's my torso there. My arm comes through here. Making it very obvious for me when I'm doing it where I want the drawn through elements to be. So then I can go here. So now one of those balls is going to be hidden, but I've got these here, that, that, that. Now you notice on the back here, the ears and head are still drawn on. Obviously, those won't be seen. But again, it makes drawing through really easy. Oh, right, we had shoulders here. And we're going to have hips here. There we go. So looking at this, we'd have our shoulders here and here. Shoulder would be sitting there. And there. So I'll spend a lot of time getting all the information I can on there, so when I start building, I don't have to stop and recheck how something would be broken down or find my pivots or anything like that. So that's the last thing we're going to do in this vid here, is making note of where our pivots are going to be, because if we get them on here, it's really nice. I can copy and paste them for when I'm drawing, and it makes things ridiculously easy, and everything's got the same pivot point then. So what I'm also going to do is I'm going to create another color in my palette here for the pivots. Boop. And this is just going to be on my pivots notes page. The actual pivots won't be colored in the final rig. But I'm going to pick another bright color Yeah, let's make them bright red. And again, I'm just going to keep a transparency to them still. So on this particular character breakdown, you can see that there are pivots already marked. There were pivots already drawn, and I actually made a line here straight across the knees to make sure the pivot stays on the same spot for the knees. I've got a line for the elbow here to make sure the elbow pivot stays the same across. But I'm going to go ahead and hide this breakdown right now. So click on the breakdown and hit D to hide it. I'm going to go to my pivots drawing, and I am on my front view. So I'm going to grab my circle tool. And I'm going to go through and try and find pivots. Which obviously, I'm going to need a pivot for the base of the head. So I'm going to go ahead and click basically wherever I think that pivot's going to be. I'm going to hold down Shift and Alt because then the circle will pull out from where that is. If I don't hold down Shift and Alt, you can see it pulls out that way. If I hold down Shift, it'll stay a circle, but again, pulls out from the side. If I hold down, yes, I would like to save, Shift and Alt together, it will pull out from the middle and keep it a circle. So I'm probably going to want to pivot right about here for the neck. So I'm just going to go ahead and Shift, Alt, pull it out. I'm then going to grab this tool here. And holding down Shift, I'm going to scale it to the width of the neck. Try and line that up. I'm holding down Shift to move it straight up. So we'll probably have that right there. Cool. So this will work for a reference for me for when I'm building the neck. That is how wide we want it. Like if I bring it back down here, you can see I've lined it up. Actually, it could be a little bit wider. With the line art, here we go. Move it straight up, holding down Shift. But now I also want to create the center pivot point so I know exactly where my pivot's going to move to. So with it selected, I'm going to Control Copy, Control Paste. It pastes it kind of on an angle. So if you hold down Shift, hit the up arrow once and the left arrow once, it is now exactly centered on top of the circle. I don't know why Toon Boom shifts it to the right and down one. It does. Now I'm going to hold down Shift and Alt again. With this tool selected, I'm going to scale this down until it's just a little point. Neck pivot. Well, head pivot. Neck would kind of be down here. But now that I have this, I can copy and paste this to create all my pivots. So I'm going to select it. I'm going to Control Copy, Control Paste. I'm going to grab this. And actually, because I want to put the base of the neck straight down, I'm going to Control Copy, Control Paste. Shift up and left. Hold down Shift, so I'm moving it directly straight down. That's pretty much where the collarbone would be. Cool. And that can be used to make our neck. Now this is where it's going to get a little bit clustered, a little bit like busy. So now looking at this, we know we have shoulders as well. So I'm going to need to figure out the pivot for the shoulders. Now what can happen if I were to say grab this, Control Copy, Control Paste, move that there, and then down the road when I'm making my drawing, I want to grab this as a base for the shape of my neck. Sweet. That's still separate for us there. Sometimes what can happen is they'll end up merging, which can be a little bit of a pain in the butt. But we've got that there, so we're going to go here. Okay, so now that we've got the neck, we're going to find the pivots for the shoulders. So I'm going to Control Copy and Control Paste. I'm going to zoom in. And remember, if I turn my guys back on here, we had like a shoulder kind of here. Let me just undo that so I can grab the pivot again. The shoulder's probably going to be pivoting, if you think about anatomy, kind of pivot shoulder collarbone area, so like right about here. And I'm going to scale it down. Make sure, again, I'm lining this up with the line art. Shoulders coming there. So you probably have that coming there. And that looks to be about a right spot for that. Maybe make it a little bit bigger. There we go. I'm then going to paste again. And figure out a pivot point for the, basically where the shoulder and the arm meet. Because right now that's the rotating point from like the shoulder blade. So again, I'm going to line up that with my line art. I'm going to hold down shift so it stays a circle. I'm going to scale it in. And I might have to move it a little bit to realign it there. But now what I want to keep in mind is this circle to have a really nice rotation. I want this circle at the bottom of the shoulder to be the exact same circle that I use for the top of the sleeve. So if I turn my breakdown back on, you can kind of see that I kind of roughed it out there. That, yeah, you know what, that would wrap around there nicely. That'll wrap around there, and that'll be a good smooth transition there. Cool. So that's our pivot point for the arm to the shoulder. Next, we want to find the elbow. So you notice on this one, it's actually marked the pivot point for the elbow and the line straight across. So I know I want my elbow to be starting here. So I'm going to center the tool right there, Shift and Alt, so it scales out from there. There we go. And I'm making sure that's lined up with the line art nicely. Now because this one I started new, instead of copying and pasting, I've got to create another center point. So Control Copy, Control Paste, Shift up and left, Shift and Alt down to scale it in to a little point. Now ideally too, when we're building the arm, we won't have to make this arm come all the way up here because it is going to be hidden, but you're going to want them sharing the same point because your arm and your sleeve are going to rotate from the same position. So now I'm going to copy this pivot and I'm going to paste it. You can see we've got the marking there for where the wrist pivot should be, so I'm going to put that pivot point right over the dot that's marked there in the line. And then using Alt and Shift, scale it out until it nicely matches our line art. There we go. Now I'm just holding down Shift so it stays round, but then lines up a little bit nicer. There we go. If your concept art doesn't have these lines already marking exactly where they want the pivot points to be, you've kind of just got to think of anatomy, where your elbow is kind of coming to your rib cage and your wrist obviously past your hips, depending on the design. Okay, next we've got our hips and our legs and our torso. So we're going to copy and paste for our pivot. Now, for our pivot for this, I'm going to Shift and Alt so it's a little bit bigger, obviously. I'm kind of lining it up with where about the crotch line is there. And then I'm going to scale it out that way, and that way to about where I would think the hips would come. So again, if I look at my breakdown, hips are coming up here. So if I were to grab my breakdown and my brush right now, on my breakdown page, there's that circle. The hips would basically come up, around, and down like so. I'm going to go back to our pivots drawing here. So that's coming up there, that's coming up there. I think this needs to be a little bit wider on this side here. There we go. Now remember, the shirt's going to be over top of the pants, so you don't want to line up with the shirt line art. I'm going to be a little bit narrower. Now the other thing, because I've scaled up, this center point is quite large, so I'm going to Shift Alt, size that down to like a nice sharp little point. And that's going to kind of be our center pivot where the torso rotates up from there, and the hips are going to rotate from there too. Now I have a feeling if I scale this down to the hip size, that's going to be next to impossible to see. So I'm going to grab this here, copy and paste it. And now I'm going to line this up, so Shift and Alt, making sure it's big enough to basically be as wide as the pant leg. And I'm going to move it up to where I think the hips are going to want to be. And these basically determine the shape of the hips. So this is coming straight up here. Yep, that's as wide as the pant. We're coming up. So when we go and build the torso, it's coming, sorry, the hips, it's coming across here, up and around, and it's taking on that kind of like flattened, semi-melted circle shape, like kind of flat here and going up. And that'll be the hips. I'm going to copy and paste another pivot. For our knees, which again are marked off on the concept art, so I'm going to go right here, Shift and Alt. And I'm just adjusting the size to make sure this lines up nicely, but making sure that pivot is on that pivot line. We've got our upper leg, our lower leg. And then obviously our ankle. So I'm holding Shift. So making sure that that is wide and lined up with the line art. So I know it's the right width, and then moving it down. So basically if she's walking, your ankle pretty much sits right about there. Yeah, right about there. And then the, no, that's going to be too high. We want it further down. Yeah, because then that would rotate there. There we go. And now we've got our pivots for our the important joints to make sure we've got good, smooth rotations there marked. And that is for the first one. So then what you go do is you go through, and we do the exact same thing over here. So what I will sometimes do is I will go here, I will go Control Copy. I'm dragging this over to my 3/4 view. I'm going to paste it. So they're kind of roughly exactly where we want them. And then I will just shift them as needed. So you'll notice here, because I copy and pasted, these have kind of become one element, unfortunately, because they're crossing over. So I will actually probably just go ahead and, whoops, redraw that hip one. But this I can hold down shift so it only goes down in one direction and just move it right over. That way I know it's staying on the exact same level. Same with this, I'm just going to move it over to the right spot. And you notice in this perspective, the legs a little bit wider. So I'm going to go ahead and just adjust the size of that. And then like I said, this here, I'm going to re-add that hip one. Width of the pant leg. Zoom out, we kind of had it right about here. That line's coming up there. If I swap between them, I think that's a little bit lower. That looks to be more on the right level there. There we go. And then again, I can control copy, profile, control paste. Now the only thing with the profile view is that obviously like this shoulder, these two, because they're kind of in the same place, they're basically going to end up overlapping to the exact same point. There, because it's coming around there. But our shoulder here can slide on over here. Our hips are, sorry, our torso's kind of pretty much already in the right spot there. Our hips, we're going to just slide it over so they're in line with our center of gravity there. You can see our shorts coming up and around like so. And our elbow line up with the arm. From this view, it looks like the arm's a little bit bigger, so we'll just scale that up a little bit. Slide our wrist circle over. Looks like it needs to be scaled just a little bit. And we're just going to move everything over to where it needs to be and adjust. And then it gets really easy for our 3/4 back, because basically our 3/4 back is our 3/4 flipped. So I will grab our 3/4, paste it on the back here. And then I'm going to go to my tool properties. I'm going to flip it. I'm going to hold down shift as I slide it over. But it failed to move my hip, so I'm going to go ahead and grab that. Actually, what I'll do, I'll delete that. I'm going to grab that circle, control, copy, paste it up and over, shift and alt to scale it out and get my hip back. There we go. You can see these just need to be shifted a little bit, so I'm going to just slide that over. We're going to slide these over. Whoops. All of them. Here we go. That's lined up here. We're going to move our elbow over, our wrist over. Our knee needs to be moved a little bit over. And our ankle needs to be moved over. Lastly, our back view, which, hooray, is basically our front view flipped again. So I'm going to copy the front view, I'm going to paste the front view, and I'm going to flip it. And with everything selected, hold down Shift, and just slide it straight over until it's lined up. Ooh. Make sure everything's selected. There we go. Ta-da! So now we've got our pivots set up ready to go. Because remember, as she's rotating, this arm's our near arm. It's coming around to there. And then when we flip it, it's still our near arm. So now we've got our pivots planned out. So it's going to make the drawing go a little bit quicker. We've got a starting of the drawings we're going to need and the elements and pieces we're going to need. And then our next video, we will get into building the drawings. I know it's a bit of time for prep, but it makes things go a lot smoother and a lot easier once we get going, as opposed to sitting there and trying to figure out as I go through the character what needs to be done with each of them. I spend a little extra time planning and prepping it out, and it makes things go a lot smoother down the road. So hope this was informative for you guys, and stay tuned for the next video when we start creating our drawings and setting up the rig.